Joining me now with more is US Bureau Chief Nirmal Ghosh, who's currently in Singapore. Nirmal, Mr. Biden has been warning about this crisis for some time, and he now plans to speak with his G7 counterparts. What do you think could come out of these meetings?
Yes, what we can expect is a wide range of tougher sanctions as Europe faces the reality that Vladimir Putin has factored in the expected response and yet gone ahead with invading Ukraine, clearly with the aim of removing the current government of Volodymyr Zelensky and turning Ukraine into a pro-Russia buffer state. And what is clear from the Russian president's most recent statements, furthermore, is that he wants to restore the old glory of the Soviet Union's empire, which fragmented back in 1991. So what they can and most likely will do is expand the sanctions. We've heard the Europeans in the last few hours saying they will pull out the stops, and they could do a lot of damage, especially if they really target the oligarchs and cronies who have a lot of assets in the West. Washington has already imposed sanctions on the firm building the $11 billion Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, which supplies Germany with natural gas from Russia. On Tuesday, Germany froze approvals for that pipeline, which has been built but is not yet operating. And now it is possible the project will be permanently scrapped to avert dependence on Russian energy supplies. We will also likely see sanctions against more Russian banks, bans on American and European financial institutions from processing transactions with Russian banks, export controls on American goods, and so forth. Now, the key thing to watch is if they hit Vladimir Putin's cronies hard, because that could sow disaffection with Putin. That is really the only thing the West can do to try and impose damages so Putin's allies and cronies will question whether he has gone too far. There is plenty they can do in this regard if they really decide to, and given the fact that they are worried about Europe's security balance, that this is an invasion by nuclear power, which is a big shock to the system, this is a test of how far they will go to inflict real economic damage. Because in many cases, cutting Russia off from the global financial system means Western nations with investments and assets in Russia may also suffer. But all this is related to how they perceive the Russian threat, not just to Ukraine, but beyond.
Nirmal, Mr. Putin has said that Russia will react immediately to any foreign interference. So apart from economic sanctions, like you mentioned earlier on, what can US and its allies do against Russia that doesn't result in the consequences falling squarely on Ukraine?
It is difficult to put NATO or US troops on the ground in Ukraine. The US has already ruled out boots on the ground because Ukraine is not a member of NATO. It is difficult to launch military strikes to deter Russia because Putin has said he will retaliate. And that would raise the level of threat significantly, given that we are talking about nuclear powers here. Earlier this month, US President Joe Biden, in an interview, said when Americans and Russians start shooting at each other, that is a world war. And on Tuesday, the president, when he laid out the first tranche of sanctions, very specifically said these are defensive. And he said, quote, "We have no intention of fighting Russia," unquote. Now, why did he say this? Principally because domestically, polls have shown for some years now that the American public does not want the United States to get involved in a shooting war in Europe or anywhere over a country which many Americans would be hard put to find on a map. And Russia, of course, knows this. So apart from sanctions, what the Western powers can do is intensify what they have already been doing, which is military assistance to the Zelensky government. This can be ramped up. They can impose blockades on Russian shipping, for example. But frankly, it is hard to see them being able to do anything else for fear of military escalation going out of hand. At best, they can stall the Russian advance and then negotiate.